Over the last couple of days, you've probably seen a whole bunch of headlines talking about Google having a second foldable model, which was actually canceled in favor of what we're getting, the Google Pixel Fold. There's been tons of speculation about what that second foldable might be. I've seen headlines talking about a clamshell Pixel foldable device being alluded to. I've seen all sorts of interesting things. Well, where does this come from? It comes from a very interesting place. There is a Made by Google podcast. This was posted 1 day ago as I am filming this on the 30th. I am still recovering from a migraine, but I figured I could get this video done. Not feeling my best, but I wanted to get at least this done today. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the easy thing that everyone should do. We're going to go to the spot in the podcast where this stuff is mentioned. We're going to listen to it, and we're going to determine what was actually said. Do they talk about a clamshell foldable? Do they talk about a secondary foldable? Or are some of these headlines absolutely full of you know what? You can see the timestamp down below. I'll drop a link in the description to this exact page with this podcast on it. You can go listen to the whole thing to make sure I didn't miss anything. But this is what was said.
What's happening on the inside is also really important. You know, we're trying to make the thinnest foldable on the market, which puts a lot of pressure, if you want, on the engineering to build a hinge that is extremely compact, but also extremely torsionally stiff and clever. So a lot of time was spent in this kind of song and dance with engineering to find just the right hinge that also has just the right feeling when you open and close a device, right? It should be a very satisfying feeling, really, that we're going after.
Yeah, it was something also we talked to some of the engineers in previous episodes about the Pixel Fold. Like, it needed also, if you use tabletop mode, you have to, of course, be sure that the device remains in tabletop mode when you put it that way, for example.
Exactly, yeah. It has. I mean, it needs to work really well in a couple of different stages, essentially. And a lot of trickery that goes into it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm really proud of the team because there was another foldable model that we had created that we had the discipline to hold back and say, nope, it's not good enough yet, and really wait until we felt like we could do something that was good enough or better than what was out there already. So it's really a testimony to the fact that we're able to do that and recognize when something isn't good enough.
So as you just saw and primarily heard, I wanted to give a little bit more context than the news articles that I was seeing. The articles I was seeing only took the quote from Ivy there towards the end, where they say, we were working on another foldable that wasn't good enough, so we scrapped it and waited until we could do something that was up to our standards. Because from that, there's just not a lot of context, and you can kind of let your imagination run wild at that point. So what I wanted to include there was the stuff that came first, because I think that it adds the context that we need here. I believe the individual's name there speaking before Ivy was Claude, and they spent a lot of time talking about some of the aspects of the Pixel Fold, in particular, the hinge. So Claude is talking about the hinge, the stiffness, the fact that it can stay in tabletop mode, it can maintain its postures, and it is at that point that Ivy sort of steps in as if the things he was saying triggered a thought, something that Ivy then wanted to say.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm really proud of the team because there was another foldable model that we had created that we had the discipline to hold back and say, nope, it's not good enough yet.
At this point, we also have to factor in that we've been hearing rumors about a Pixel notepad for what feels like 43 and a half years. It would pop up, there would be rumors that this thing was imminent, it was about to be launched, it was a nearly finished product, and then it would be delayed, and then it would pop back up, and then it would be delayed. What I believe, if we put all this together, has happened, is that Google built a Pixel notepad. They built a device initially that was close to being launched, but it lacked some of the things that they felt like it was going to need to compete. I believe one of those things could very well be postures, based on the context of this podcast. So they had a device that was nearly finished. This lines up with all the rumors we've documented on this channel going back a couple of years now, right? They had this device, it was nearly finished, but they stopped themselves and they said, this is not good enough. So they scrapped it to some degree and then continued with the Pixel Fold. Perhaps other things changed, right? Perhaps the aspect ratios changed. Perhaps they did want to differentiate themselves a bit more in some other ways. And eventually that did turn into the Pixel Fold that we are set to get at the end of next month. So for the various websites posting headlines stating that Google is working on a clamshell foldable, that Google has confirmed it's working on another foldable that isn't yet ready, I would say to you, you're being misleading and you were reading into what was said in this podcast, things that were not said in this podcast. If you have a source saying something else, you should cite that in your article, but it appears as though these websites do not have another source. They're simply taking this snippet, which I just let you hear, and making things up, which is absolutely disappointing. I think the simplest answer here, which is usually the correct one, is exactly what I've laid out for you here in this video. Hopefully Google does continue down this road. I do think a clamshell foldable does also make sense for them as well. A Pixel Flip, if you will, would be very, very cool to see. But at this point, I'm unaware of any firm reporting to actually bring to you on this subject. And this podcast is definitely not that. So guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.